The Alpha Surprise Twin Heirs. Chapter 5. Talia woke at dawn to find Aldric's arm wrapped protectively around her waist, the warmth of his body pressed against her back. She let herself savor the quiet before the bustle of the day began. The hush of the room felt especially precious now that she was recognized throughout the pack as Luna. She wondered how long she could linger here, wrapped in a soft cocoon of blankets and the steady beat of Aldric's heart. She breathed in his familiar scent, recalling all the changes that had happened in such a short time. The Luna ceremony had been emotional, overwhelming, and yet wonderful. With so many eyes watching her, wondering if she was truly prepared to stand at Aldric's side. In the days that followed, she had thrown herself into her responsibilities, determined to prove that she could not only love this pack, but also help lead it. Still, the underlying worry remained. Was she enough for them and for Aldric? A gentle movement stirred at her back. Aldric pressed a kiss to the curve of her shoulder, exhaling a low murmur that made her smile. Without opening her eyes, she reached back to thread her fingers through his. He was always so warm, so reassuring with these silent gestures of affection. "You're awake," he murmured, voice still husky from sleep. "I am," she said, turning to face him. "I've been awake for a little while, thinking about everything that's happened." His golden eyes, heavy-lidded but attentive, locked onto hers. Even in the pale morning light, Talia could see the concern there. He raised a hand to smooth a lock of hair from her face, his fingers lingering at her cheek. "You still look worried. Is it about your duties? The pack?" She allowed a small laugh, though it sounded self-conscious to her ears. "I suppose it is. I keep telling myself I'm getting used to this life, but sometimes it feels like I'm wearing a mask of confidence. The pack sees me as their Luna, and I have to project strength and serenity. I just hope I'm not disappointing you, or them." His forehead creased faintly in disapproval, and he slid his hand from her cheek to her waist, pulling her closer. "Talia, you're not disappointing anyone. You've done more than anyone could have asked, all while adjusting to motherhood and your wolf awakening in the same breath. Do you realize how many she-wolves in your position would have faltered by now?" She touched his chest, feeling the steady drum of his heart. "I hear that from you and from Charlotte and Beth, but it's hard to let go of the doubt in my own mind. Maybe it's just old habits, old fears I can't shake off." His expression softened. He leaned in to press a gentle, lingering kiss to her lips, one that sent a slow warmth through her body. "You're not alone in those fears. Even I've had doubts about my ability to balance fatherhood, leading a pack and being a devoted mate. No one has all the answers, but I do know you were meant to be by my side." She closed her eyes, returning the kiss with a tenderness that bordered on longing. It never ceased to amaze her, how he could calm her racing thoughts with just a few soft words, and that unwavering gaze of his. She let her hand slide up to his shoulder, fingers curling into the fabric of his nightshirt. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I think about how different our lives were before. How I was just a nanny, content with the simplicity of it. Now every day feels monumental, like the entire future of this pack depends on us." He let out a low hum. "And I was the unreachable neighbor, the lonely alpha, convinced I'd never have a mate, much less children. We've both stepped into a future neither of us anticipated. But I'll remind you as many times as it takes. You're not just enough, you're more than I ever hoped for." She felt tears prick the back of her eyes, a wave of gratitude swelling in her chest. She kissed him again, more fervently this time, expressing with action what she couldn't put into words. The sweetness of that moment soon gave way to a quiet intensity. She could feel his heartbeat quickening beneath her palm. His own hand drifted lower, resting on her hip as he deepened the kiss. She finally pulled back, slightly breathless, and allowed herself to bask in the contentment of the moment. She loved how safe he made her feel, how fiercely he defended her even before she had believed in herself. She was about to murmur something else when a faint knock sounded at the door. Talia bit her lip, suppressing a soft laugh. It seems we can't stay hidden in here forever. Aldric groaned lightly, nuzzling her cheek before calling out, "Yes?" Beth's warm voice answered from behind the door. "I'm sorry to disturb you both, but the twins are awake and making quite a fuss. I thought you'd want to see them." Aldric locked gazes with Talia, eyes gleaming with affectionate humor. "We'll be right out," he replied, and he brushed one last lingering kiss to Talia's forehead before he rose from the bed. Talia slipped out of bed as well, searching for a robe. "Our responsibilities beckon," she remarked with a small smile. He chuckled, tugging on a simple shirt and trousers. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." She finished dressing quickly, smoothing down her hair before opening the door. Beth stood in the hallway looking apologetic. "They've been babbling away, as if they're holding a conversation with each other," she explained, offering Talia a curious smile. "I've never seen such an advanced development so early in babies, but it's endearing. They calm down a bit whenever we bring them together in the same cradle." Talia and Aldric exchanged a glance. They both knew their sons were already showing signs that surpassed ordinary infant behavior. She followed Beth down the corridor to a room they had set up as a comfortable nursery. There, Charlotte rocked the older twin while Luca hovered, looking faintly amused. "They just won't keep still," Charlotte said, trying to guide the baby's flailing arms back under a blanket. "Beth is right. They're babbling nonstop, almost like they're speaking in some odd way." Talia moved closer, peering at her son's face. He looked up at her with bright eyes that seemed oddly focused. The baby let out a string of coos that rose in pitch, then paused as though waiting for a response. The younger twin, resting in Luca's arms, made a matching coo in response, and both babies seemed to settle into a calm hush for a moment. Beth crossed her arms in mild astonishment. "Do you see what I mean? It's like they're communicating." Luca gave a slight nod. "It's not like any baby talk I've heard. There's structure in how they pause for each other." Talia reached out to run her fingers along the older twin's downy hair. "They really are extraordinary, aren't they?" she whispered. She felt a rush of parental pride, but also a faint flutter of apprehension. "They might be developing faster than we expected." Aldric placed a hand on her back. "We'll guide them carefully. However advanced they are, they're still our sons first." Charlotte carried the baby over to Talia. "Here, I think he wants his mother now," she said, gently transferring the wriggling boy into Talia's arms. He nestled close, his tiny hand batting at the air until he grasped the edge of Talia's clothing. Talia smiled down at him, touched by how instantly he quieted, as though reassured by her presence. "Thank you, Charlotte," she said softly. Before Charlotte could respond, the baby made a series of sharp, cheerful coos that caused everyone to pause. His eyes shifted between Talia and Aldric, as if beckoning them both. Talia felt a surge of warmth and amazement. She looked at Aldric, who seemed equally captivated. "They're certainly something else," Charlotte commented, unable to hide her grin. "If this is them at just a few months old, imagine what they'll be like when they start crawling or talking in full words." Beth cleared her throat gently as though about to impart something important. "On that note, I've spoken to one of our elders, who's well-versed in older texts. He mentioned a prophecy referencing twin heirs with unique abilities. The rumor is starting to spread through the pack." A subtle tension gripped Talia's chest. She'd heard mention of prophecy before, but only in fleeting hints. She glanced at Aldric, who nodded solemnly. "Let's keep a close eye on them for now," he said. "We don't want rumors to run out of control. We'll handle it carefully when we have more information." A short while later, Talia found herself in the hall with Aldric, the babies having settled enough that Charlotte and Beth could manage them for a while. Luca accompanied them, describing some of the day's planned meetings. "The revered seer from the northern forests arrived last night," Luca explained. "He's asked for a private audience with both of you. Apparently, he's heard about the twins' abilities and wants to share new insights into the prophecy." Talia's stomach did a small flip. "I've never met a seer before," she admitted. I didn't realize we had that kind of mystic in the Pack's wider alliances. Luca nodded. This particular seer is known for traveling between territories, collecting lore and glimpses of future events. He rarely stays in one place, so his presence is unusual and likely important. Aldric placed a comforting hand at the small of Talia's back. Let's hear him out. If he has information that could help us protect our children, we need it. Soon they were in a quiet chamber typically used for more private discussions. The seer was there, an older man with long, silver-streaked hair, tied back. His eyes were almost unnervingly bright, and he wore a simple robe that suggested he wasn't aligned with any specific pack. When Talia and Aldric entered, he inclined his head in a gesture of respect. Alpha Dark Moon, he greeted, then turned to Talia. And Luna Talia, I offer my congratulations on your union and the birth of your twin heirs. Aldric remained standing, crossing his arms in a protective posture. We appreciate your kind words, but I understand you have something to share with us regarding the prophecy about our sons. The seer's gaze flicked to Talia. It is said that when twin sons are born to a lineage carrying ancient blood, they will not walk their path alone. They shall grow into formidable leaders, but they are also destined to bond with twin she-wolves of equal might. Together these four shall unite the realm in lasting peace. But, he added, his voice suddenly taking on a sober note, peace does not come without trials. The twins, all four of them, will face threats determined to see the prophecy fail. Talia felt her heart pound at the mention of twin she-wolves. She glanced at Aldric, whose expression flickered with equal parts pride and trepidation. So you're saying they already have predestined mates? She asked. The seer let out a slow breath. That is what the old scrolls suggest. No one knows who these she-wolves are yet. Perhaps they're children in another corner of the kingdom, or not yet born. The prophecy only states that the union of these four will be the key to a brighter future. He turned back to Aldric. You asked me to come because you suspected your son's unusual development tied into a greater destiny. This is the core of it. There are lines describing their unique abilities, how they will surpass even you in strength alpha, and how they will unite fractured packs, but many will oppose them out of fear or envy. Talia's pulse fluttered. She felt Aldric's hand curve around hers, lending steady reassurance. What can we do to keep them safe? She asked, voice trembling at the idea that enemies might already be forming. The seer exhaled. Shield them. Teach them with patience, let them learn the value of compassion as well as strength. They will have to walk their own path, but your guidance is crucial. Beyond that, I see no clearer path. Only that their fate is tied to these prophesied she-wolves, and that the entire realm's future hangs in the balance. A heavy silence fell. Talia squeezed Aldric's hand, drawing calm from his presence. She realized that while she had braced herself for news of a prophecy, hearing it outlined so explicitly made it feel more real, more daunting. Aldric broke the stillness. Thank you for sharing what you know. We'll protect our children, no matter the cost. The seer nodded. I believe you will. I sense the bond between you is strong, and that may be your greatest advantage. With a respectful bow, he departed, leaving Talia and Aldric alone to process his words. Talia let out a shaky breath. Twin she-wolves, she whispered, the idea swirling in her mind. Our boys are fated to meet them someday. That's a lot to take in. Aldric turned to her, his gaze full of resolve. We have time, Talia. They're still infants. We don't have to solve this prophecy tonight. She nodded, but she couldn't shrug off the weight in her chest. It just feels so big, like their lives are already plotted out for them. He pulled her close, pressing his lips to her temple. Then we guide them with love and freedom, so they can face that future on their own terms. We do this together. She let herself sink into his embrace, grateful for his unwavering presence. I'm just worried. I don't want them to be burdened. He stroked a gentle hand down her back, his voice soft. I know, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure they find as much joy as they do responsibility. They stayed there for a few minutes, soaking in each other's comfort. Then, as if remembering they had a world outside this room, Aldric gently cleared his throat. "We should see to the elders soon. Luca mentioned some had concerns." Talia shook herself from her thoughts. "Right, let's face them." They made their way to one of the communal halls where a handful of elders gathered. The group hushed as Talia and Aldric approached. Talia forced her posture straighter, recalling Aldric's advice about composure. She recognized a few among them who had been uncertain about her. One, an older woman named Soren with silver hair braided down her back, spoke first. "We wanted to discuss Luna Talia's background. There is talk of how she came to awaken her wolf only recently, under extreme conditions. Some wonder if that sudden awakening might cause instability, if you'll pardon my bluntness." Talia felt a flush creep up her neck, but she kept her head high. "I've heard those rumors. I understand your concerns. All I can say is that my wolf, though it awakened late, is a part of me now. I've had consistent training from Aldric, and I'm learning to control my shifts. I'm not a threat to the pack. In fact, my awakening only makes me more determined to protect everyone here." Another elder, a man with deep lines at the corners of his eyes, stood with a frown. "Your sincerity is noted, Luna, but sincerity alone doesn't assure us that you have the leadership skills to guide this pack alongside Aldric. Leading is about more than power or good intentions." Talia felt her pulse quicken. "You're right, I'm still learning, but I believe leading also involves empathy and willingness to listen. I've been speaking with many in the pack, ensuring every voice is heard, especially those who once felt overlooked. That's something we can all benefit from, whether we awakened our wolf at birth or last month." Soren studied Talia's face. "And if something were to happen to Aldric, how would you handle leadership on your own?" Talia swallowed. The question stung, but she took a steady breath. "I would lean on this pack, on the elders, on Luca and Charlotte and Beth, because leadership isn't a solitary act. It's about unity and cooperation. I'd do everything in my power to protect this place that has become my home, just as I would protect my sons." There was a pause, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Talia felt Aldric's presence at her side, his gaze scanning the elders. He didn't speak, letting her words hang. After a moment, Soren nodded slowly, as if acknowledging Talia's stance. "That is a fair answer, Luna," Soren said. "We only want to ensure the pack's stability. Seeing your effort is comforting." The older man who had spoken earlier pursed his lips but finally inclined his head. "We'll watch how you handle upcoming challenges. For now, we are satisfied with your responses." Talia exhaled, a wave of relief coursing through her. She thanked them softly, then stepped aside with Aldric as the elders departed. She felt her hands trembling slightly, though her voice had been steady. "You did remarkably well," Aldric said, turning to her. His eyes shone with admiration that made her heart flutter. "They needed to hear from you directly, and you handled them with grace." She let out a shaky laugh. "It was nerve-wracking, but I felt sure of my words, like I was really speaking from my heart." He leaned in, brushing a light kiss over her forehead. "That's what makes you perfect for this role." They walked together, eventually meeting up with Charlotte and Beth in a nearby corridor. Both women wore expressions of muted anticipation, clearly curious about how the elders' meeting had gone. Charlotte raised her eyebrows in a silent question. "It went better than I expected," Talia said with a small smile. "They're cautious, but they seemed willing to listen." Beth beamed. "That's a step forward. I had no doubt they'd see your sincerity once you spoke with them directly." Charlotte grinned, giving Talia a playful nudge. "And they'd have to be blind not to see how you and Aldric work so well together. They'd be foolish to dismiss that." At that, Aldric slipped an arm around Talia's waist. "I'd give Talia all the credit," he said, voice laced with pride. Just then, one of the pack messengers hurried over to Aldric, bowing his head. "Alpha, the visitor from the Emberfall pack has arrived. He's waiting in the main hall." Aldric's expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. Talia sensed his tension even before he spoke. "Tell him we'll be there shortly," he said. As the messenger left, Aldric let out a careful breath. Talia touched his arm. Is something wrong? Emberfall's pack is an ally, he admitted, but their diplomat Darius has a reputation for being a bit persuasive in ways that grate on me. I heard rumors he admires strong she-wolves. Charlotte smirked. We'll keep an eye on him then. Aldric shot a faintly apologetic look at Talia. I'm not worried about you. I just don't relish the idea of this man being overly charming in your presence. I can't promise I won't feel a flicker of jealousy. Talia felt a warm flutter in her belly at the protectiveness in his voice. We'll handle him together, she said gently. I have no interest in his charm if it's directed at me. He nodded, offering a small smile that revealed his relief. Let's go see what he wants. In the main hall, they found a tall man with auburn hair and an easy, confident posture. He greeted Aldric with enthusiastic courtesy, then turned his attention to Talia, bowing over her hand with a flourish. Luna, Talia, he said, voice dripping with genteel politeness. A pleasure to finally meet you in person. The stories don't do you justice. Talia kept her expression polite, though she felt Aldric's subtle tension. Thank you, Darius. What brings you to our pack? A simple diplomatic visit, Darius said lightly. Emberfall's Alpha thought it was prudent we reaffirm our alliance, especially now that you have new leadership in place. He smiled, eyes lingering on Talia a beat too long. I must say, I'm impressed by all I've heard about you. A wolf awakening late, yet stepping into the Luna role so gracefully. Truly remarkable. Aldric's arm brushed Talia's back as if to quietly assert his place beside her. We appreciate your interest, but Talia's success is hardly surprising to those of us who know her. Darius chuckled, his tone smooth. No offense intended, Aldric. I only meant that it's a rare story, one that certainly spreads far and wide among allied packs. He turned again to Talia. I do hope we'll have a chance to speak. Perhaps compare experiences of leading, though I am not an alpha myself. Talia kept her polite smile. I'm sure we can arrange a conversation, she said, though something in Darius's gaze made her spine prickle. She sensed no direct threat, only an intensity that felt borderline invasive. Aldric shifted subtly, positioning himself closer. We'll schedule an appropriate time, Darius. For now, Talia and I have other duties to attend to. Luca can show you to your quarters. Darius gave a theatrical bow, a charming smile in place. Of course. I'll look forward to it. As soon as Darius followed Luca out of earshot, Aldric let out a frustrated breath. I don't like the way he was staring at you. Talia slipped her hand into his, giving it a gentle squeeze. He's just flirtatious, I'm sure. And you know my heart belongs to you. His eyes flickered with a mixture of relief and lingering jealousy. I know, he said softly. I just can't help wanting to keep you away from men like that. I hope you understand. She leaned up, pressing a comforting kiss to his jaw. I do understand, and I'll make sure he stays at a respectful distance. He exhaled, tension easing from his shoulders. Thank you. Their day passed with the usual busyness. Talia oversaw a small gathering where young wolves shared concerns about training schedules, and Aldric led discussions with senior pack members. Through it all, Talia felt a quiet confidence bubbling within her, still aware of her own doubts but heartened by the acceptance she was increasingly receiving. Late that evening, Talia returned to her chamber to find Aldric waiting, with a thoughtful expression. He held a small cloth bundle in one hand. When she stepped in, he closed the door behind her and turned with a slight smile. I have a surprise for you, he said, his voice low, the candlelight casting a warm glow across his features. Her heart fluttered. Another surprise? After everything that's happened? He nodded. One that might allow us time away from it all, even if only for a short while. He extended the cloth bundle. She opened it to find a discreetly folded piece of parchment. She scanned the writing, a location near the far side of the territory, near a small lake tucked into the forest. Her breath caught. "This is the old cabin we used before, isn't it?" Aldric nodded, his eyes shining with anticipation. "I know you've been under a lot of pressure. I have as well. I thought we could use a brief escape, just a day or two, away from the formalities and watchful eyes so we can be ourselves." She looked up, her heart swelling with gratitude. "But the twins, we can't just leave them, can we? Beth and Charlotte have agreed to watch them for one night. Luca will ensure the best security around them. We won't be gone for long, just enough to breathe and reconnect." She hesitated only for a heartbeat. The thought of stepping away from her children tugged at her, but so did the promise of spending unhurried, intimate time with Aldric. "I'd love that." His features lit with relief. "Then pack something comfortable. We'll leave in the early morning." True to his word, at dawn they slipped out of the estate, relying on Beth's and Charlotte's care for the twins. Talia felt a swirl of emotions, a slight ache of missing her babies already, but also a rush of excitement at the thought of having Aldric to herself for a while. They traveled mostly by a discreet car, avoiding the main roads to keep this getaway private. The sun was well above the treetops by the time they reached the secluded cabin nestled among towering pines. Talia remembered the last time they visited a cabin like this. The memory of that tender, intimate escape lingered in her mind. This cabin was slightly larger, with a wraparound porch overlooking a shimmering lake. She inhaled the scent of pine and moist earth, feeling some of the tension in her shoulders melt away. Aldric helped her out of the car, then carried their light bags inside. The cabin smelled of aged wood, and large windows offered a view of the water. She wandered through the cozy space, admiring the simple furniture, the plush rugs, the well-stocked hearth. She hadn't realized how tightly wound she'd been until she felt the calm of this place settle over her. He approached, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "Better?" She leaned her head back against his shoulder. "Much better," she said softly. "I love it here already." His mouth found the curve of her neck, pressing a series of gentle kisses that made her sigh. "I wanted you to have a retreat from the demands of being Luna, even if it's only for one day." He guided her to the small fireplace where he set to work, kindling a modest fire against the slight chill in the cabin. She stood nearby, watching him, heart full of fondness. Soon the fire crackled quietly, casting flickers of light around the warm interior. When he turned back to her, she smiled. "You remember how we used to dance around each other, hardly speaking more than a few words at a time?" He let out a soft chuckle. "Feels like ages ago. Look at us now, not wanting to be apart even for a moment." She stepped closer, winding her arms around his neck. "I wouldn't trade this for anything. Even if it means the entire pack leaning on me, even if there's a prophecy about our twins, you make it worth it." He cupped her cheek, thumb stroking lightly. "I feel the same. My life was empty before you, even if I didn't realize it at the time." He kissed her then, slow and tender, the warmth of the fire at their backs matching the warmth building between them. They talked for hours, sprawled on the thick rug by the fireplace. Talia rested with her head on Aldric's lap, while he absent-mindedly played with her hair. Their conversation drifted between memories of childhood, his stern upbringing under a father who rarely showed affection, her orphanage days where she felt alone and unremarkable, and dreams for the future. Aldric admitted how frightening it was to be responsible for an entire pack's well-being, plus 2 extraordinary children with a destiny that could shake the kingdom. Talia confessed she was still figuring out how to be confident in her wolf form, how to lead with compassion and authority, how to stand before the elders without trembling inside. He listened with rapt attention, never once dismissing her concerns, instead meeting each worry with gentle reassurance. Whenever tension flickered across her features, he reached out, tracing soft patterns over her arm, reminding her of his presence. In turn, she coaxed him to share more about his fears, about how the threat of outside packs weighed on him. She told him it was all right to be afraid, that bravery wasn't the absence of fear but the willingness to act in spite of it. At one point he scooped her up, carrying her to a small sofa by the window. The sun had reached its zenith, streaming through the glass. The forest outside glowed in vibrant greens. The silence around them felt cleansing, as though the world had paused to let them exist in this private haven. They joked about the charming but troubling aspects of the twins, especially their near-constant chatter and advanced abilities, and speculated about what other surprises might come with them growing older. Talia voiced her hope that the prophecy wouldn't overshadow their son's freedom to be children. Aldric kissed away her worried frown, promising her that they would do everything in their power to keep the twins from being swallowed up by expectations. As evening fell, they enjoyed a simple meal Aldric had arranged: fresh bread, fruit, and a hearty stew that warmed them from the inside. They shared laughter, feeding each other small bites, exchanging affectionate banter that glowed with the unmistakable charge of two people deeply in love. When the stars finally emerged bright against the dark sky, Talia found herself nestled in Aldric's arms on a small wooden bench just outside the cabin. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair. The distant sound of crickets lulled them into a peaceful hush. "I love you," Aldric said quietly, as though it was the simplest fact in the world. She turned her face up to his, her smile radiating all the warmth she felt. "I love you too." He swept his gaze across the tree line. "I'll do everything in my power to protect this peace. For you, for our children, for everyone we care about." Her hand found his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "We'll do it together. You don't have to carry that weight alone." They shared a lingering kiss under the vast canopy of stars, each moment stoking a blend of tranquility and passion that made Talia feel wholly alive. She lost track of time. Eventually they returned to the cabin, where the fireplace still glowed with embers. They curled up on the rug again, exchanging quieter words, holding each other close, allowing themselves to savor the closeness without the slightest interruption. In the morning, the dawn light found them reluctant to leave but aware of their responsibilities. After a leisurely breakfast, they packed their small bags and headed back to the estate. The drive back was filled with contented silence, punctuated by soft laughter whenever they recalled a memory from their idyllic night away. Upon returning, Talia felt a surge of excitement to see the twins again. Beth and Charlotte greeted them at the entrance, wearing knowing smiles that suggested they suspected exactly how Talia and Aldric had spent their night. "Welcome home," Charlotte teased, a basket of folded baby clothes in her arms. "I trust your short escape was restful." Aldric smirked. "It was enlightening and, yes, restful." Beth laughed softly. "The twins missed you, of course, but they were perfect angels, although they kept that endless string of babbling well into the night." "Where are they now?" Talia asked, eager to see her sons. "In the nursery, napping," Charlotte said. "They'll be up soon enough if you two want to settle in." Talia turned to Aldric. "I think I'd like to spend the rest of the day with them, maybe read them some stories even if they can't fully understand." He looked amused. "They might understand more than we realize, but yes, that sounds perfect." They headed to the nursery together, finding the babies curled peacefully in their cradles. Talia's heart melted at the sight of their tiny chests rising and falling. She and Aldric quietly set their bags aside and walked over. Talia leaned down, gently running a fingertip over the older twin's cheek. "Welcome back, Mama," came a friendly voice from behind. Luca stood at the door, arms folded. "We've been managing the pack well in your absence, but you were missed. And by your expression, I'd say you missed them just as much." Talia nodded, a smile blossoming. "Yes, I did." Luca gave a brief update on small administrative matters, praising Talia for how her previous efforts with the younger wolves had already smoothed some tensions. Talia felt a swelling pride and relief that her presence was making a tangible difference. That evening, Talia and Aldric retreated to a quiet family lounge with the twins, Charlotte, Beth, and Luca, joining briefly. The babies, wide awake after their nap, now gave sweet little squeals, flailing their limbs in excitement whenever Talia or Aldric spoke to them. Their earlier advanced babbling had mellowed to occasional bursts of coos, as if content now that their parents were near. Charlotte helped feed one of the twins while Beth cooed at the other. Talia exchanged affectionate glances with Aldric, her heart so full she thought it might burst. There was a peaceful sense of unity in the room, the warm hush that came from people who trusted and cared for one another. Eventually, Charlotte and Beth excused themselves, leaving Talia, Aldric, and Luca alone with the babies. Luca placed a gentle hand on Talia's shoulder, murmuring, "You've done well, Luna. The pack sees you now, not just as the alpha's mate, but as someone who stands on her own, don't doubt it." Talia looked up, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you, Luca. That means a lot coming from you." He nodded, offering a small smile. "I'll leave you to your family time." With that, he exited quietly, shutting the door behind him. In the softened glow of the lamps, Talia and Aldric settled on a cushioned sofa, each holding a twin in their arms. The babies blinked up at them, as if fully aware of the love showered upon them. Talia traced a fingertip over her son's small palm. "I keep thinking about the prophecy, the seer's words, twin she-wolves who will stand with them one day. It sounds so grand, so far off. But I can't pretend it doesn't worry me." Aldric shifted the baby in his arms, gazing thoughtfully at Talia. "I know. I feel the same. I look at their little faces and wonder how much rests on their shoulders. But we have time, and we'll guide them as best we can." She drew in a breath, then leaned her head against his shoulder. "We'll protect them, make sure they're strong enough to face whatever comes, and we'll love them every step of the way." His free hand found hers, fingers lacing together. "You and I are in agreement. No prophecy, no outside threat will take away their chance to grow up with warmth and acceptance." She felt tears prick the corners of her eyes at the earnestness in his voice. "You're such a good father," she whispered, shifting closer until her side pressed against his. "I see the way you hold them, how you look at them. It makes me love you even more." He brushed a quick kiss to her temple, voice tight with emotion. "And I see you, Talia, how you worry over every detail of their lives, how you stand up for this pack. You're more Luna than you realize, more of a leader than you give yourself credit for." She smiled through the slight blur of tears. "I'm learning, slowly, but I'm learning, and every time I feel uncertain, you remind me that I'm not alone." The baby in Aldric's arms let out a soft chirp, and Talia's baby responded with a near echo. Both parents laughed quietly, charmed by the phenomenon. Talia gently rocked the child, humming a lullaby under her breath. She could feel the day's tension easing, replaced by a tender closeness that wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. In that hush, she reflected on the last few days. The challenge of the elders, the arrival of the seer with life-altering news, the unexpected friction caused by Darius, and the romantic respite Aldric had provided. It was a whirlwind, yet here they were in a moment of perfect unity. She felt Aldric's breath slow, as if he too was soaking up this peace. She pressed a kiss to the baby's forehead, then to Aldric's cheek. "I'm ready to face tomorrow," she said quietly, "no matter what happens." Aldric turned, meeting her gaze. "As long as we face it together." Their lips met, a soft meeting of promise. Even with their arms full of wriggling twins, they managed a brief, heartfelt kiss that spoke volumes. Talia felt every note of it resonate in her chest, a vow of commitment and love. The babies made small, contented sounds as though approving of the harmony between their parents. She pulled back, resting her forehead against Aldric's. "I love you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "And I love what we've built here." He angled his head to kiss her nose lightly. "I love you too, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep you happy, to keep our family safe." They settled back, holding their infants against their chests, letting the candlelight dip the room in a gentle glow. Talia felt her eyelids grow heavy, but in a peaceful, satisfied way. She didn't know what challenges might come tomorrow, or how exactly the prophecy would unfold, but she was no longer afraid. A quiet determination filled her, one that harmonized perfectly with the reassuring rhythm of Aldric's breathing beside her. In the soft hush of the evening, with their twins clasped between them, Talia felt as though they were on the cusp of something profound and enduring. She gave Aldric's hand a final squeeze. He answered with a small, protective smile. Whatever lay ahead, whether envious rivals, old pack grudges, or the destiny that awaited their extraordinary sons, they would meet it with love, unity, and an unwavering devotion that no threat could tear apart.